Picture a world in which everyone is in a wheelchair. The world has been designed by people like me. Stairs have never been invented. They're a completely alien concept. Buildings are only 1 story high. All of your light switches have been moved and all your plug sockets moved up so that they can be reached from a seated position. What I'm here to talk to you about today is, in this world, would I still be disabled? Because if I have access to everything that you have access to, if I can go the places you can go, if I can do the things that you can do, would I really still be disabled? This question is at the heart of Professor Mike Oliver's theory of the social model of disability, which distinguishes between impairment, the physical condition, and disability, the societal condition. So, my impairment is chronic fatigue syndrome. I use a wheelchair to conserve energy. My disability is that the world is not wheelchair accessible. We live in a place of stairs and curbs and broken lifts, and society isn't ready for people like me. Disability can be a great thing, and I am very proud to be disabled. I come from a community of people who have done amazing things. From Frida Kahlo to Stephen Hawking, it's a legacy that I hope one day to contribute to. But to enable disabled people to contribute fully to society, we need to make 2 fundamental changes. Firstly, we need to make a change to our environment. And secondly, we need to make changes to our attitudes. So, this is a very sad photo of me. I was on a walk with a friend when I encountered this sign: no wheelchair access ahead. The environment can be very disabling, and this is a classic example of it. We had to turn back round and go home. Making changes to our environment to better accessibility can mean replacing stairs with ramps, putting lifts in. But I found out about this in particular path, that they do have wheelchair access. It's just down a parallel street. So whilst people think of accessibility as costly or as complicated, it can be as simple as putting a sign up saying, wheelchair access this way. This sign disabled me when it didn't need to. My impairment didn't disable me, society did. One example of disabling structures that I encounter pretty much every day is the new self-service checkouts that have been introduced in supermarkets in the last 5 years or so. I'm sure most people here will have used them. Usually it's quicker than waiting in line to be served by a person. But these new machines have been designed without disability in mind, because I can't reach the screen from my wheelchair, and I definitely can't reach the card payment machine. This didn't need to disable me, but it was a design that was made with accessibility for able-bodied people in mind, not accessibility for the diverse range in our society. Secondly, we need to change our attitudes. When we talk about disability, it's often in terms like this: disability benefits, scroungers. My first encounter with the public view of disability was when I was about 16, and I was on a day trip in London. I was enjoying my time with my friends when a man approached me and said, "Get a job, you filthy faker." And I was totally stunned. I mean, I definitely had the kind of usual part-time job that any student has, but also there's something about disability that invites complete strangers to comment on my life, as though my wheelchair is an invitation to everyone else's opinions. But it goes the other way as well. That's what's so interesting about disability, is that I get called a scrounger, a faker, but I am also inspiring. Never ignore somebody with a disability. You don't realize how much they can inspire you. I'm not here to inspire you. I am not very inspirational. There is definitely nothing about my disability that is inspiring. But that didn't stop a woman approaching me in Starbucks, touching my face and saying that she had been inspired by God to tell me that by the time I was 26, I would be married with 3 children, and that I should not worry about dying alone, because this was a prophecy. Now, I'm 21, 26 is not that far away. My boyfriend and I find this very alarming. I don't want 3 kids in the next 5 years. And I definitely don't want strangers coming up and telling me that me drinking a coffee in Starbucks is inspiring. There's nothing inspiring about a student's consumption of caffeine. So we have these really polarizing ideas about disability, and it's time to educate our attitudes. One of my favorite encounters with kind of able-bodied people's attitudes towards disability was returning to university after a summer away. Usually in a lecture, what I do is I leave my wheelchair at the back of the room, and because I can walk a little bit, as a lot of wheelchair users can, I sat down next to an acquaintance. And we were chatting, making small talk, the weather, how was your summer holiday? And then she looked at me and she said, "So are you still in a wheelchair then?" And I was totally baffled. And I couldn't think of anything witty or funny to say. So I just said, "Yeah, it's over there." And she took my hand and she said, "I am so sorry. I'm so sorry." And I honestly thought I needed to comfort her because she looked so upset. And I don't know what she was sorry for, because I love my disability. It can be a struggle, it can be hard sometimes, and adapting to a new way of living is tough. But it has taught me so much about the world and about myself, about how to change a wheelchair tire, how to speak basic sign language, even how to use some braille. I learn from other disabled people every day. Someone recently taught me how to get on an escalator in my wheelchair in an emergency. One mum who uses a wheelchair told me that because she can't push a pram and push herself in her wheelchair, she sits her kid on her lap and zips them up in her coat like a seatbelt. That's brilliant. Disabled people are always coming up with creative and different ways of getting around problems, but the problems that we have to navigate are usually put there by society in the first place. And that is what needs to change. And they are changing. This is a piece of clothing from the latest Tommy Hilfiger line of accessible clothing. They're helping disabled people, amputees, people with dexterity problems, people with fatigue problems, get dressed in energy-saving ways. These buttons are magnetic. You don't have to navigate a button through a buttonhole. You just whack them on, and it's so much easier. And it's giving disabled people the same independence that able-bodied people have when getting dressed. I think that's brilliant. It's time to look at disability as something that's cutting edge, something that's technologically advanced, something that can be cool and fashionable and interesting. These are some new wheelchair designs that are coming out. These don't look like your typical wheelchairs. I mean, I know I have a lot of wheelchair envy looking at these, especially the one that looks like a tank, because that's how I want to trundle around. But disabled people are so tired of inaccessible buildings that they have built a wheelchair that can climb stairs. That is amazing. I kind of think it would be easier just to put ramps in places, but no, people have circumvented the problem and they've built a wheelchair that can climb stairs. I just think that is so brilliant. So this is my call to action, is that we need to change our environment. We need to change our attitudes and our assumptions. We've got to change society to meet the needs of disabled people, because accessibility is an everyone issue. Disability is not my problem, it's everyone's problem. And wheelchairs and disabilities, they're not bad things. My wheelchair is one of the best things in my life. Before I had it, I could barely put one foot in front of the other. I was about 11 years old when I developed chronic fatigue syndrome, and my entire life was shrunk down to the 4 walls of my house. Very occasionally, if I managed the 10-meter walk to the car, my mum would put me in it, and she would drive me around the countryside in Sussex so that I could see something beyond my house. That was my world. And everything changed when I got a wheelchair. It opened up so many places. I could get into all the teenage trouble that my friends were getting into, and I could make all the stupid mistakes that my peers were making. The only difference was that I was doing them on 4 wheels, not 2 feet. Wheelchairs are a good thing. I value mine like a passport because it is my ability to travel places that I otherwise would never be able to go. Don't apologize to me that I am still in a wheelchair. It's likely that I'll still be in it for a while, and I love it, the same way you love your ability to walk. My call to action is to think about disability, think about our environment, think about our attitudes. I'm still learning from disabled people every day. They teach me ways to get around problems that I couldn't even imagine. Think about your workplace, your home, your life, your school, and think, how could I do that if I had to use British Sign Language to navigate? How many of you have taken the time to learn "how are you" in British Sign Language? Do you know how tactile pavement works? The way that blind people use canes to navigate is so important, and so many people without visual impairments don't understand how they work. Think about how you navigate and how you would do it if you had bones that were prone to breaking. If you were an amputee, how would you get by? If you used a wheelchair, what would you do differently? These thoughts can make us more accessible and more prepared to encounter people who are different from us. Being disabled has taught me so many things, and it is not something I want to eradicate. It's something I want society to embrace. It's taught me about the mechanics of lifts, how to change a door hinge. It's taught me how to be an activist, how to motivate people to change. It's given me a platform from which to fight for equality. It's something that I am incredibly proud of. And I hope that one day you'll view disability in society the way that I do, as a good thing. And that is why I'm glad that I'm disabled. Thank you.